Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. I've just seen Steve whack his hand off the table.
Yeah, sorry, there's a button here. Normally when I press the button I give Alan the thumbs up to say that the mics are live, but in fact I was putting my hand up and I whacked it off the desk. Sorry.
That's okay. Oh God, that was funny. Hello and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And myself, Knuckles. Stephen George, Knuckles.
Knuckles George.
Busted Knuckles.
It's Sunday the 4th of November 2018. It's going to be one of them evenings and I don't know, shows. Okay, Knuckles. Let's crack on with it. Right, okay. We just very quickly, we just have to wish a happy birthday to our voiceover lady, Steph, who's 50 years young today.
Okay, anyone else celebrating a birthday this week at any stage? Maybe on a Monday? No?
I don't know.
Monday the 4th?
Who could that be?
I don't know. Let's see, who was it? Alan.
Okay.
Alan.
There's the hint there. Yeah, I said... I'm over the speed limit anyway. You're coming up to her, aren't you, shortly?
It won't be for a while, yeah?
It won't be for a while, yeah. Not too long, few weeks. Anyway, happy birthday to Steph. Anyway, she's 50 years young today. Right, okay, now our guest on the show tonight is a lady called Deborah Tavares. And Deborah has been on the show before, a while ago actually, but we're going to do a full show with Deborah tonight. And we're going to be talking about the dangers of 5G and the technology and everything else that's going on. It's going to be an interesting conversation with Deborah. And before we do that, let's find out about the communication channels.
Okay, and we'll hear the beautiful dulcet tones of Steph.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, the OYM chat room can be found at oymradio.com. And as we do say, if you have your login details, you can log straight in and you can ask questions for our guest, Deborah Tavares, this evening. Obviously, the chat room was really only active during the live show. So if you're listening to the podcast, it's kind of a moot point, really. But yeah, Sunday, 7 to 9 p.m. GMT. That is where you will find all the activity on the chat room. And a big hi to everyone already logged into the chat room there. You're most welcome. Also on People's Internet Radio, we're monitoring the chat room over there for questions too. And a big hi to everyone logged in there. Also on our own website, oymradio.com, you will see the usual links there for the anti-social media, Facebook, also for Twitter, Skype, email, the YouTube link, and also the latest bad boy, MeWe. So if you haven't joined us already on MeWe, please do so. It's an alternative to Facebook and very popular, gathering lots of momentum actually. So a big hi to everyone on our MeWe platform. You're very, very welcome. What else we got? We have the phone number 046 927 1212. That is if you're calling from inside the Republic of Ireland. If you're outside the ROI, it's 00353 469 271212. Again, the phone number is on the website. So if you need to contact us during the show or actually during the week, you can get that phone number there. Lastly, we have the TuneIn Radio link. That's a free application. It is on the website also, where you can stick us on your smartphone, your iPhone, your laptop, and all other fancy devices, and listen to us all day, every day.
Brilliant stuff. I'll just say, apologise. I am kind of bunged up with a cold at the moment. And I'm all kind of nasally and everything else, so apologies for that. But
he's all bunged up. I'm bunged up myself. I think you cut it off me.
There's a song in there somewhere. So apologies for that. But we'll soldier on anyway, and I'll do my best. I might be blowing my nose in the background, so I'll turn on the mic for that. Yesterday we were down at the Open Minds conference. For those of you who actually got down and seen us there. Well done for getting down. It was a great 3 days. I'm probably still going on at the moment, I'd probably say, more than likely. But 3 days of brilliant information, brilliant guests. We were on Saturday morning first thing, and we had to talk about the waking up process and the food belief system. But he had a great guest there, loads of people down there. So really, really good stuff. Really enjoyed it. How did you feel about it? How do you think it went down?
I think it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, we went down on the Friday. We left Friday afternoon, and it took about 3 hours to actually get down to the destination, to the venue. But once we got there, it was like there was a buzz around the place. Definitely, we kind of met some great, fantastic people. Not just speakers, I might add. There was a lot of people there just for the conference who we kind of just bumped into and had some very interesting conversations. And these are people who probably wouldn't have even known that we were actually speaking. I know I spoke to one chap actually yesterday. Just out of the blue, just met him, just walking along, and he just started chatting to me. He actually came over from, I can't remember, way up near Greenland or Iceland, up that direction. Copenhagen. Okay, it wasn't that far away, actually. Copenhagen, yeah, he actually flew over just for the conference. I think he came over for the 3 days. So, and that's some dedication. And, yeah, as you say, even the speakers, there was a lot of fantastic speeches that we did actually catch on the Friday night. John Weigel, we caught John, Bernadette Bowen. We were there for many of the speakers yesterday morning also, including Mary Helen Hensley, Tom Darcy, and a lot of fantastic people. I have to say, it was really. I would have loved to have been still there today.
And you know what was great is that a lot of the speakers who were in the audience listening to us doing our talk, the majority of them have all been on OYM, which is quite interesting. I thought that was quite interesting. But there you go. So, great conference. Well done to Trevor and the team. They did a fantastic job. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be scheduled for next year as well, if things go according to plan. So that's going to be good news anyway. And we'll probably try and get Trevor on maybe next week. We'll get him on for 20 minutes and get an update on how it went and how everything went. So we'll see how we get on. But you're kicking us off, Steve, with your news.
Sorry, I was just trying to look up there. I said Tom Darcy. I don't think it wasn't Tom Darcy. Sure, it wasn't.
Tom Duffy.
Was it Tom Dunn? Oh, it was someone called Tom anyway.
Big Tom.
But Big Tom and the Travellers. But he actually done a great talk yesterday. I have to say, I really enjoyed it. Anyway, aunews.yahoo.com reports on a mum who fatally stabbed a rapist and dragged him behind a car has been jailed. It says a Brisbane woman who has been jailed for killing her rapist after he threatened to harm her child unless she submitted to more sex, but will be eligible for parole in less than 2 years. Roxanne Ika Peters, 35 years, fatally stabbed Grant Johnson Kasser, 51, with a blow to his heart using a kitchen knife at her home in Kapalba in December 2015. Then she tied a rope around his body, including his neck, and dragged it behind her car for about 1 kilometre to a ditch where she hid the body. In the Brisbane Supreme Court on Monday, Peters was sentenced to 9 years in jail for manslaughter and a further 18 months after she pleaded guilty to interfering with a corpse. With time served, she'll be eligible for parole in June 2020. That's a horrible story.
It's a horrible story, but the whole idea of this is, the system. I think she went to the extreme of like tying him up and dragging him behind the car. But self-defense, at the end of the day, if the lady is going to be raped or raped again and he threatened her child, obviously you're going to try and be protective over that. But I do think that she went a bit too far. So it's just something to where you have to kind of draw the line where when people take the law into their own hands, which I think is if you're going to be attacked, then fair enough. But I think she just went overboard with that. So yeah, that's why we put it down there. Right, okay. The Irish legal. Do you want to comment on that? No.
On the story about the lady. It was terrible. I think it was perhaps a step too far, but I mean it did say there that he threatened her child.
Yeah.
And
the mum and children.
Absolutely. I mean you look in the wild, a tiger or a lion or whatever, you threaten, you go near the young, and the mother will. She will beat you up.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see the logic there. Okay, irishlegal.com, the website, says 2 men wrongly jailed for contempt reach settlement for damages. The pair brought proceedings against the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform for $75,000 in damages, although the figure settled for eventually is unclear. 2 men who were wrongly jailed for contempt of court have reached a settlement for damages, the Irish Examiner reports. The Joe Ducey and Wayne Nash, I'm sure people know Joe and Wayne, spent 48 hours in jail in June 2016 after being found in contempt at Athlone District Court. Judge Seamus Hughes, famous judge, people know, had ordered them to spend 7 days in jail because he overheard the pair insulting him outside the court.
Outside the court?
So they were outside the court having a private conversation, regardless of what they said, and the judge thought, I'm not having that. I mean,
How can you get away with that?
this is the Irish justice system.
So we've no free speech, lads.
Yeah, there you go. They were released after 2 days when the High Court found that they had been unlawfully detained. Actually, it was Ben Gilroy that put in paperwork to get them released. The pair brought proceedings against the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform for $75,000 in damages each before Dublin Circuit Civil Court. Counsel for the Minister later told the court that the proceedings had been settled for an undisclosed sum and legal costs. Well, Joe, as you know, is in jail at the moment. Legally again. But imagine that. So you're outside having a private conversation outside the court and they send the police out to arrest you. Now, that was outside the judge's jurisdiction and the police should have said, I'm sorry, Your Honour, but we can't do that. That's against the law. But did they? No, they came out and arrested them. I mean, unbelievable. But anyway, how's your week, Knuckles?
My week's, look, not too much to report. I mean, the highlight of my week was waiting for the conference on the weekend. And as I said, the whole time we were there, the atmosphere was absolutely electric, I have to say. There was a lot of very nice people there, both speakers and, just ordinary people attending the venue. I have to say, we were kind of surprised because when I seen how many seats had been laid out, how many chairs in the venue, I thought to myself, there's probably going to be a few empty seats. I didn't think it was going to be as full as it was, but I have to say, I was wrong. I was proven wrong, and I'm glad I was proven wrong. It was an absolutely fantastic turnout. There wasn't a seat to be had when it was kind of at its peak. In fact, people were actually standing down the back and along the sides as well. And it was just the buzz in the place. I can't describe it. My words will do no justice to how it actually felt. But anyone who has been at these sort of events before, you know what I'm talking about. And just the fact that being in a room with so many like-minded people, even on the Friday, we caught a couple of speakers on the Friday, and then we went into the restaurant. We had some kind of a late supper, and we had a couple of glasses of lemonade, as you do. And there were a few people there who we knew. We may as well give a shout out. I mean, Trevor was there. One of Trevor's buddies was there. Mick from Liffey Sound was also there, and a few other people. And we ended up kind of sitting together, and we had the absolute best conversation. Like, it was one of those conversations that when we eventually finished and we all were going our separate ways to our rooms, I just commented to my wife, I said, what do you think of that now? I said, there was a group of men sitting down and there was no talk of sports, no one looking over at women going, whoa, or anything like that. It was all intelligent conversation, and wow, I'm sorry, I could just keep going on and on, but yeah, it was absolutely amazing, electric. For anyone who didn't go, I urge you, try and get tickets for the next one. Dates have actually already been set. I think it's for the first week in November 2019, so I don't know when the tickets are actually going to go on sale, but dates have been set, so try and clear your calendar and maybe get a little piggy bank and put a couple of cents, dollars or euro inside it. Anyway, there you go. Rant. Or not a rant, it was kind of, whatever. How's your week?
Well, same as you was. Down the conference and doing what we're doing. Very quickly, before we bring Deborah in, we're just going to bring Deborah in a few minutes. Just something that I was doing during the week, and people need to be aware of this. We talked about kind of redundancy built into technology. My son has a PlayStation 4, and what happens is that after a period of time, when it starts getting dusty, the fan gets noisier, and of course, when the fan stops, the game overheats, damages the PlayStation 4, and you either get it fixed or get it replaced. So my job as dad during the week was to strip the PlayStation 4 and clean out all the fan of dust and all that kind of stuff, hoover it up, blow it out and everything else, and which is what I did. Put it all together, powered it back up, and then everything's back working now, and the fan's much better than what it was until the next time it gets clogged up. But it's just amazing that the systems don't give you the opportunity for people who are not technical. How can they go ahead and clean a PlayStation 4 if they're not comfortable opening up a machine and taking it apart to clean it down? So this is the kind of redundancy built into technology, which is pretty bad. They should find a way where you can actually clean the system without actually having to open it up and take it apart. But there you go. That's just, the way manufacturers do stuff.
Yeah, but I suppose if you're a kind of a techie anyway, so I mean, for anyone who's not kind of techie, that would have just continued to fill up with dust and eventually would have just overheated and went kaput, I suppose.
Yeah, basically. Right, okay. Now, we're going to bring our guest in, but before we do that, we're going to read out a quick bio and then we'll get Deborah in.
Okay, for anyone who's just joined us, our guest this evening is Deborah Tavares. Deborah is a third-generation land developer of residential construction and has been self-employed in a family-operated business for over 30 years. She specialised in land feasibility studies, acquisitions and building permit processes, including required environmental impact reports, along with furnishing Department of Real Estate subdivision requirements and the entire construction build out to completion. It was during the process that the restrictions of property rights became evident under the creeping constraints of the United Nations Agenda 21 through land use limitations, restrictions, regulations, fees and increased liability exposures. Deborah is spreading the word, exposing the connections between mysterious global trends of man-made and corporate military control technologies, weaponized frequencies, the falsified science of the global warming movement and other major programs intended to cause damage to health and reduce the population and to eliminate freedom for all people for all time. Wow.
There you go. Brilliant. Hi, Deborah. How are you doing?
Well, hello. Thank you. I am doing very well here in what is left of Northern California, here where we had those unimaginable fires back here in October of 2017, about an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge, just out of San Francisco, an hour north. So we're hanging on here, and I mean hanging on, because there have been many changes. We have resiliency that has crept into our cities here. This is one of the first things that I really recommend everybody check out for yourselves. You can type in the name of your town or city, followed by, on the search bar of your computer, the name of your city or your country, followed by climate action plan and resilient plan. And you will find those plans already adopted in your cities. Because, Ellen, what I find is people are constantly asking, things are bad. We're being heavily chemtrailed, fires, lots of toxic smoke. The cost to rebuild now here is explosive in increased costs because of costs of materials and not having enough labor. And yet we have massive increase in homelessness. In fact, just as a sidebar here, you can also type in homelessness plans. These are worldwide plans of literally asset stripping all of us through bonds and taxes to direct towards homelessness. But sadly, just like our roads here in the United States, we're continuously told that the increased gas tax, et cetera, is going to improve our roads. And, of course, that isn't the case. The Wildlands Project is not going to allow for road improvement because you're not supposed to be able to travel outside of the mega cities that are now being constructed or may never end up being completely constructed because of the weather weapons being used on all of us everywhere in many different ways.
Do you think that the fires that were in California, number one, were caused by energy weapons, and number two is a land grab?
Well, I think a combination of that plus more. What we do know is that directed energy weapons were used. We know that it was in conjunction with the smart meters. We fought long and hard to get an opt-out here in the United States for the deployment of the smart meters. That's to monitor your electricity on your homes. You have them there. It was a global rollout, predominantly deployed in large now. And we noticed that a few of the homes that did not burn did not have smart meters. And as people were evacuating, with maybe 15 minutes to literally leave their homes as the fires were racing through the towns. They were hearing explosions. And we also know that one of the main sewer treatment plants went offline. They had to take it off of Pacific Gas and Electric, which is our utility company here, which is run by Rothschild, as all of ours are everywhere, run by Rothschild. We just initially discovered that by typing in our utility company, which is called Pacific Gas and Electric, and followed by Rothschild on the search bar, and you can search your utility company as well. But certainly the smart meters were involved. We know that likely drones were used. This was a weaponized, controlled event. And during that fateful night and day of October 8th and October the 9th of 2017, we had several hundred fires erupt pretty much at the same time in multiple counties. Many of our friends and family members lost their homes. This moment, there are hundreds and hundreds of RVs that are parked around the county and off side roads while people are trying to figure out what they're going to do, because sadly, most of them, or many, 60% of the people are not going to be able to rebuild because their insurance is just not going to allow them to meet many of the new energy requirements, which are now in play everywhere throughout the world as well, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and CO2, which you have to look at the climate action plans and the resilient plans as plans of death, because we need CO2 in order to live. The plants take in the CO2 and then produce oxygen. And we're in a massive state of water wars right now throughout the world as well, and particularly here in California. But when you hear me talk about California, it's only because I live here and I look at the plans, but all of this is worldwide. The privatization of water is worldwide, and the increase of water delivery is going to come from wastewater or sewer treatment plants, a catchment of rainwater as it goes through our drainage systems, which is highly toxic, and desalinization. In fact, I'm going to just read some quotes that recently came to light from the International Panel in Climate Change. And this is what we face with their plans. This is what the controllers that make the decisions, or believe that they make the decisions for all of us, have in mind. Besides, of course, the continued chemtrailing. And I will tell you, as I speak right now here in Northern California, we have been heavily chemtrailed the last number of weeks. In fact, during the fires, we were heavily chemtrailed before the fires, during the fires, and after the fires. And certainly what that caused was the holding down of all the toxins from the burn, all the electronics that burned, all the cars, all of the plastics, etc., that were in all of these homes. In our area, we lost about 5,200 homes. Total in this whole area in that first fire of October was 8,000, a combination across counties of homes and commercial buildings. Now, of course, since then, there have been many more fires. Thousands of additional homes have been lost. So we're over 10,000 homes over this season, which they tell us is a new normal in fires because of climate change. They're telling us, in fact, there's signs erected around this county that say prepare. Fires are year-round and potentially frequently, and they're now saying we have a red flag warning. And what has happened is Pacific Gas and Electric, a.k.a. Rothschild, turns off the power. They're certainly not wanting to have the continued blame of their power lines having initiated the beginning of the fires, because it caught vegetation on fire. That's the accusation. When in fact, Pacific Gas and Electric Rothschild owns a large percentage in Weather Central, has conducted weather weapons, and in fact, we have a YouTube up called Plan to Burn Up Northern California, which we put up about in 2015, and it was essentially in conjunction with plans prior to the fires. And in fact, I think right now I'm going to take a moment to just read an email exchange between Rothschild and our California Public Utility Commission. This is relevant to all of you, wherever you are in the world, because Rothschild and Company, LLC, and more run the utilities. And this was a email exchange back in August 22nd of 2011. And it was an email exchange that started from the California Public Utility Commission, and it was going to Pacific Gas and Electric. And the subject line is space weather. And this is what the CPUC is sending to Pacific Gas and Electric. I assume you're assembling a high-level task force of washed up and never were, yet somehow movie star handsome former astronauts to handle PG&E's response to the upcoming damaging space weather. Also, please dribble out one at a time over the next few months all internal memos, lawsuits, PowerPoint presentations, and officer cover-up directives in which Pacific Gas and Electric is repeatedly warned about damaging space weather and chooses to do nothing, and then has its lawyers blame its customers, aka earthlings, for any adverse consequences resulting. Now, only within a few minutes, here's the response from Pacific Gas and Electric to the email I just read you right now. They're still carrying the subject line of space weather. Here's the response. Just a reminder, we are the first to propose a solar generator in space that will beam RF waves down to a receptor site and convert it to DC current. We have changed our receptor site location from the Mojave Desert in California to Sebastopol, California. And Sebastopol, California is here in Santa Rosa, about an hour north of San Francisco, for all of you, just so that you can visualize the geography of this. So this was an email that was intercepted with a required download when Pacific Gas and Electric tasked their smart meter director to infiltrate an anti-smart meter movement group. And as a result of the smart meter director at Pacific Gas and Electric being caught, the requirement by the law judge was for Pacific Gas and Electric to download and release over 65,000 documents. This, I'm certain, was released by mistake. It was part of that document download. You can hear more about the other aspects of the Plan to Burn Up Northern California simply by listening to the YouTube. Plan to Burn Up Northern California. So you asked me about the fires. Yes, it was absolutely the use of a variety of weapons, climate, wind, certainly the overhead aerial chemtrailing program with the heavy saturation of aluminum oxide, which is highly combustible. That's been sprayed globally everywhere. We went to Russia for ourselves to examine and observe the use of weather weapons there. It's everywhere. There are no borders where the frequencies that are now being amped up. There are no borders. We're a borderless world when it comes to chemtrailing and the frequencies, the water contamination, the food contamination, all of the contaminations that we all face. And I know at the end of the show we're going to talk about some hopeful things, But until we get to that hopeful discussion, I'm going to roll out some documents that, again, I encourage everyone to go to stopthecrime.net, which is our one of our websites, stopthecrime.net, and go to our YouTube video channel. We're posting continuously. And I think some of the things you're going to want to watch after you listen to the program today is our YouTube we have up called Sewer Poop Tour. And we're going to be putting up on the channel here soon, very shortly, a tour of a geyser, a geothermal operation. Now, I'm only going to talk a moment or two about that just so that everyone can start to assimilate the enormity of what is happening with the new methodology of increasing electricity for smart cities. The powers that be are planning to create more geyser geothermal operations worldwide. Now, the Puna, P-U-N-A, geothermal prefecture in Hawaii, it has been determined, and of course it was owned by Rothschild. It has been determined that because of the diagonal drilling of the boreholes, it's very likely that they exacerbated the effects of the volcanic eruption on the Hawaiian Islands. So there is a YouTube up on stopthecrime.net that discusses that. And I would recommend everybody watch it, start getting familiar with geothermal. I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about that. But we can have another show on that. That in and of itself is a show. But the YouTube on stopthecrime.net is evidence grows that Hawaii volcanic eruption caused by Puna, P-U-N-A, geothermal venture. And I would help get this out far and wide because I want to tell you, and we really do need your prayers here in Northern California because not only do we have Bohemian Grove just a half an hour away, but we now also have the world's largest geyser geothermal operation. Again, the world's largest. And it was originally owned by Rothschild, which is Pacific Gas and Electric, and it was recently sold to another arm of the Rothschild branch. It's under Calpine, and it is the largest geothermal operation. I'm going to say a couple of things about that. When we toured the sewer poop tour that you can see, we learned and received confirmation that there was over a 40-mile pipe from the sewer or wastewater treatment plant, as they call it. Now, when you hear the word wastewater treatment plant, insert the word sewer and urine. And understand there's no way to get all of the toxics and chemicals out of the treatment of sewage, which is going to become more of our drinking water in our cities. Will be sold different levels of water quality as time goes by. But having said that, this sewer treatment plant is connected to the geysers, which is high up in the hills on a rim above Sonoma County. 40 miles of pipes with pump stations that pump this treated sewer and urine water, which they inject in the boreholes in the geysers to create more vapor so that they can sell that as electricity. Now, we learned during the tour that the USGS has multiple monitors in the hills because the injection causes earthquakes. And they will only admit to a seismic earthquake of up to 4.2, but many homes in that vicinity have had some structural and cosmetic damage where chimneys shear off and windows break, and when they seek remuneration from the activity at the geysers, the judges, who are all in place by the controllers, deny them any recourse for the fact that it's the geysers and it's the injection of the sewer water that has been occurring. They started injecting the sewer and urine water treated into the boreholes, and that's when the earthquakes literally increased in daily activity. And we toured this plant, and we're going to have that up on stopthecrime.net. I would ask everybody to watch it, please. It is an unbelievable operation, and it is the operation of and the way in which the globalists are planning to yet rape the earth again, use the environment, rape it again to serve us up more electricity. But let's talk about what else the geysers do, and this is very important. I will just say this real fast because this wasn't intended to be a geyser moment, but there are geysers also in El Salvador, and they moved 21 families that were homeless to within 800 feet of the borehole to see what their health effects would be from the hydrogen sulfide that comes out of the ground near the geysers. So let's talk about what hydrogen sulfide is, and then I'll continue on another topic. But hydrogen sulfide is more toxic than carbon monoxide and almost equivalent to the toxicity of hydrogen cyanide, which is used in criminal executions. Hydrogen sulfide is taken directly into the lungs during respiration when it enters the bloodstream. When the concentrations of hydrogen sulfide build up in the blood, the nerve centers in the brain that control breathing are paralyzed, and people die. It can be fatal within a minute to humans and animals by absorption through the lungs. Studies have also showed that it is possible to absorb the chemicals through ingestion, but it is only moderately water soluble and thus mostly a hazard in its gaseous phase. If absorbed in the body, the hydrogen sulfide is primarily released through the urine. Well, interestingly enough, we found that there is a sewer water treatment plant in Madera, California, Madera. We just learned about this a week or so ago, where the plant is crumbling. The concrete in the sewer treatment plant is crumbling and falling off of the rebar. And after it was examined by experts, they found that it was hydrogen sulfide. So you've just heard me read to you how when we assimilate the hydrogen sulfide on lower levels when it doesn't kill us, it's released in the urine. And so I just want to say that this is a new technology that's going to expand. It is a horrific technology to create more electricity, and to certainly be used to affect areas near the geothermal operations, because wind shifts can cause pockets of increased hydrogen sulfide. And when wind drifts and there's pockets, they can literally increase the ill health effects of the hydrogen oxide. In fact, we found that in the Puna geothermal plant in Hawaii, there were a number of evacuations because of high levels of this gaseous material. So why am I telling you this? Because this is planned as one of the aspects of electricity for the mega cities that are being constructed all over the world. Now, it's important to understand where is all the money from the mega cities coming from. It's coming, certainly, we're all very heavily taxed now to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and CO2. Again, think in terms of reducing CO2 as reducing oxygen. That is also what is occurring not only in our atmosphere, but in the water as well. We learned that in the sewer treatment plants or in any other industrial waste plants, when they release that water into the streams and creeks, it's released in those areas of streams and creeks at a higher temperature. And that is reducing the oxygen, and the fish are dying. So, and of course, it's oxygen reduction in the environment as well. And for many of you, we run a website called primarywater.org, primarywater.org. I would urge everyone that is listening to understand we do not have a water shortage. We do not need to be drinking human fecal and urine. We do not need to be drinking waste that they recapture in the irrigation systems and process it and serve it up in our homes. We do not need to be drinking some of the new technologies now, they call it intelligent water, where they're literally taking the moisture out of the atmosphere and creating water in bottles that they're going to serve us up with. The atmosphere is extremely poisonous from all of the chemtrails, all of the radiation bomb testing, and so much more. And when you find out the corrupt, evil intention of serving up poisonous water globally and reducing water supplies globally under the myth that we have a finite amount of water, it is the best news you're going to hear me talk about until the end when we talk about some solutions, is that we have plenty of water. And Muammar Gaddafi, one of the reasons, of course, that Libya was blown off the map is that there was the great man-made river project, the eighth wonder of the world that was created by a labyrinth of plumbing under the desert sands that served upwards of 70% of the Libyan people with pure, fresh, unadulterated primary water. In fact, IQs are much higher where people are accessing primary water because, again, it comes up from the fractures and fissures down below. It's a continuous process of hydrogen and oxygen merging, becoming vapor, and it must surface, and it does, in beautiful oases in the deserts, in hot and cold springs, the tops of the mountains in what's left of Hawaii, where these beautiful never-ending waterfalls cascade down into these beautiful crystal clear ponds down below. People don't ask the question, where is all this water coming from? After the Napa earthquake here in Northern California in 2014, many of you may have heard about that earthquake. It opened up cracks and fissures in that area, and water started to run in very parched creeks. We had been under a very lengthy, deliberately created drought by the weather weapons programs during that time of the quake, and water started to run. And the water agencies here were scratching their heads, wondering where that water came from. Well, now all of you that are listening, share it far and wide that we are not running out of water. It's the same thing with petroleum. We have been brainwashed into believing it's a fossil fuel. Our gas never came from dead dinosaurs. It is not a fossil fuel. And so the enormity of the programming and the disinformation and the lies to take over every resource and to literally capture us in a greater depth of stupidity as we are literally compromised with our minds, with the 5G and all of the other frequencies that are spreading throughout this world. And I would say right now with 5G, because it is a rollout, it's not stopping. Crown Castle out of London is the purveyor of 5G globally. That is Rothschild Crown Castle. Google and Crown Castle are the FCC. When the FCC recently released its documents, originally, and this is crazy, and you have to ask yourself, how can this be? And what am I talking about? Well, here is something that occurred back in 1990. And it is the countdown to the decline of health in the United States. But it applies to you as well, because this is happening globally. So in 1990, the U.S. EPA proposed to classify microwaves and other electromagnetic fields as a Class B1 probable carcinogen. And that was squashed by the White House, which, by the way, is a corporation, not elected by us. It is a corporation. The illusion of elections, of course, are crazy. But it was squashed by the White House, and EPA was stripped of all of its radiation labs, and key EPA scientists were disciplined. That was back in 1990. Now you roll into 1996 and you get this. In 1996, the Telecommunications Act suspended the free discussion of health effects from cell towers when cities wanted to argue the position and location of a tower, because buried deep in that 1996 Telecommunications Act was a landmark bill in Section 704. A Wisconsin senator inserted a little-known clause that prevents all local governments from hearing objections or challenges to cell tower placement based on possible health impacts forever. So you have to think, who on earth is making these rules that they do not allow the discussion of health impacts? The only thing that has been allowed here in the United States for refusal of a location of a cell tower, for example, is the aesthetics. Maybe the telecom industry, aka Rothschild and LLC, wanted to put it in an undesirable location that would take away from the beauty of a building or something to that nature. So there were then those opportunities to say no to a cell phone siting, but not now in the new FCC rules. And I'm going to read this to you because this is pertinent to everybody. This is what it says in a report out of the United States about realizing the full potential of government-held spectrum to spur economic growth. And I'm citing this report because I have a YouTube up called The Cooking of Humanity. Cooking of Humanity. When my husband and I went up to Portland, Oregon here in the States a few years ago and had the opportunity to interview Barry Trower, who was there for just a few days. So The Cooking of Humanity, you will see me sitting there holding a report, and you will see a map of the United States, and you will see the radar around the ocean areas of the United States in that report. And sadly, we did not talk about that report. We talked about the effects of microwave warfare for mass mind control, of course, very important. And we talked about the fact that military weapons systems are disguised as civilian communication networks for jamming our cells and destroying all of us. But the backstory was really this document that I did not talk about. I'm going to just quickly go into that. But I want to certainly reference everybody to watch this current YouTube that we have up, maybe a month ago, entitled, it's entitled Coastlines Under Attack. Coastlines Under Attack. Storm surges artificially created. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment, but I want to finish up on this report. So here's what it says in the report. Ultimately, all countries will have to make the shift to a new architecture because no country has enough spectrum available to meet the exponential increase in demand that comes from the onslaught of billions and billions of connected intelligent devices, sensors, internet systems, and services in technology sectors. The first movers capture the bulk of the lifetime of profits, and those profits fund the development of continuing leadership. The United States is at the crossroads in spectrum. Changes in technologies and publics and policies are inevitable. 2012 is a critical year. The nation must start to change course now to reap the full economic benefits of federal spectrum. So that is what is happening globally. It's to reap the economic benefits of the spectrum. And also, when you see that map that I talked about, that this was just a quote out of the document that supports that map in the Cooking of Humanity YouTube, you will find that this deployed radar around the perimeter of all coastal areas of the United States came out of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, and that was July 20th of 2012. This represents psychotronic weapons for mass mind control and invasion of the human brain with artificial intelligence and controlling all of our specific thoughts, emotions, and directing our physical actions into unsuspecting human beings. So we talk about targeted individuals. Absolutely. The use of psychotronic weapons is now fully engaged. So this is ending free will as we have known it, what we may have thought was free will. And this map is absolutely horrific, and this document is horrific. And those that were involved in this was the White House Spectrum Management Team, Google Inc., Microsoft Corporation, Stanford and Harvard Universities, all Luciferian operations and black budgets as well, Virginia Tech, UC Berkeley, National Telecommunications and Information Association, FCC, and NSA, and others. That's who's involved in the global takedown of all of our ability to think. Now, why was this map so important? We had a colleague talk about what is happening on the coastlines. This is a global assault, and I just told you a YouTube that I would highly recommend everybody watch, called Coastlines Under Attack, Storm Surge Artificially Created. It is fully documented. You will see that every branch of the United States government and Australia, and likely all of your governments too, is behind this. You can type in actually any agency in your country. For example, I can type in the Health Department, followed on the same search line, a climate action plan. I will find that every agency, every department, every branch of military is enforcing climate action plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and CO2, and to implement massive restrictions of resource use, including water. And we have those agencies now fully on board. So what is the situation with that map? Here it is. Here's a comment from one of our team at that time. And the comment from this team member of StopTheCrime.net said that they are very much aware of the NASA war documents. And now the NASA war documents is a document that we've had on StopTheCrime.net for a number of years. If those of you may not have heard of it, I would highly recommend you search that on StopTheCrime.net and take a look at the enormity of the plans for all of us in that document. But they state that they know the NASA war documents. They also know the document Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, and I will say to all of you that are listening, if you have not downloaded or read Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, I would recommend that you do so. In a 41 or 42-page document, you will learn what the plans are and how they have already been initiated. But this person was also talking about the fact that they know how digital GWIN signals work, and they know without a doubt that there are specific harmonics needed for mass mind control. And the bottom line is that 70% of the global populations live in coastal regions where they have the positive effects of negative ions, which helps with clearing our minds. It reduces the ability for mind control. In other words, we're not as easily mind controlled with the effects of the ocean pounding on the sand and surf that generates massive negative ions of oxygen, and that supplies entire nations, which is what they describe as good vibrations. And what strikes the interpreter of this map is the fact that the digital wave signals as shown on the map are specifically and only heavily concentrated along America's coastlines and nowhere else. And it appears they are seeking to electromagnetically strip the ions from the air. They say that they see no other reason for this. The net result will be to simply be capable of increasing a more chemically depressed national population and much more easily mind-controlled nation. And the final comment, this is as nefarious as hell. And of course, I think all of you could agree. So this is happening throughout the world, not just around the perimeter of the United States. And I would highly recommend that you, again, look at that recent YouTube Coastlines Under attack. They are.
Okay, so let's. There's a lot of information there. I was going to say, so what's the bad news? But there's a lot of information there that we need to go through. So before we get talking about certain things, the one thing that I want to kind of talk about and get into is the whole 5G thing, because we actually haven't spoken to Barry Trower about the 5G. Barry's a good friend of OYM, but we had Mark Steele on, and we seen John Weigel last night on Friday night doing a talk at the Open Mind Conference. So I know you're in talk with John Weigel. Now, in Ireland at the moment, we're having a village down in Dingle, apparently, is going to be the test subject for 5G and the rollout of 5G. So there's an awful lot of information that you talked there about things that are coming down the pipeline, or what they're planning to do. That doesn't mean that they're going to get away with it, because there are changes taking place in good ways that they mightn't get away with that at all. They might be shut down. We've spoken about this before, about the middle management and the minions are doing what they're told, because the board of directors are the inner wars happening. They're going to be taken out. And of course, the middle management and the employees don't know any different, and they're just carrying on doing what they're doing. When that comes to the external war, and people start seeing what's going on, there's a good chance that all that won't happen, fingers crossed, if everything goes according to plan. So, what we need to do is deal with what we're seeing now at the moment. They might be planning some of that stuff in 2 or 3, 4 or 5 years' time, but and some of it obviously they're doing now. The likes of the 5G is very important. That's being rolled out now. We're already hearing stories of people being affected by 5G in so many different ways. So let's just focus on that at the moment, because in Ireland, we know there's talk about 5G. We know they're rolling it out in the UK as well, and they're doing testing over here. So let's talk about the dangers of the 5G and what you've seen so far, because I'm sure you're probably well ahead of us, and 5G is probably being rolled out over there already. So tell us about your experiences with the 5G.
Well, it is being rolled out. There is misreporting coming out of the United States about people that are going to their local city governments and getting their cities to implement moratoriums. And the moratoriums that are being implemented are literally to keep the status quo in the city until the cities can update their telecom policies. So what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what that means. The FCC documents, again, the FCC is controlled by Crown Castle and Google. The FCC is now eliminating review, engineering-specific review on individual poles that the 5G equipment is deployed on. In the past, there had to be specific engineering of the poles to make certain that they could withstand the additional wind loads of the attached equipment and or snow loads. They lash the equipment onto existing Rothschild grid systems, poles and lights, if the cities do not own their light fixtures, which is another thing too, because we now have a rollout of LED city lights that are extremely hazardous for our health. The LED lights cause macular degeneration, many eye diseases. That's being rolled out worldwide, and the old incandescent lighting is no longer being manufactured here in the United States pursuant to the Department of Energy and the need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and reduce CO2. This is why they're rolling out all of this horrible equipment. But getting back to the 5G, the latest FCC documents tell us that cities are no longer able to stop the deployment of a siting of any wireless component at all based on aesthetics. They always could do that in the past. That's now eliminated. The FCC is saying that because of the need to expeditiously roll out 5G, that they are no longer going to require individual engineering per poles to lash the additional loads on, and they're just going to suffer the consequences of safety consequences in court, which they control the court system. So what has happened is, sadly, it's been misreported here, for example, in Santa Rosa, California, also Sebastopol, California, Marin, California, and different cities north of the Golden Gate Bridge, that they have stopped 5G. They have not. What they've done is they've stopped until the cities roll in and improve their telecom ordinance, which I said, but the cities can only argue for a higher cost from the wireless network for the use of their poles if they're going to attach to city-owned infrastructure. But as it stands right now, the majority of light poles and the poles that are being deployed right now as we speak in Northern California, everywhere, every day, we're seeing the small cells rolling out. And they're being deployed on the utility grid structure of the wooden poles here. And as I say, we're seeing that roll out. It's unabated. No, we cannot stop it. The cities cannot stop it. And in the FCC documents, there are actually threats to various cities should they even consider or think that they can cause a moratorium. In the document, it says something to this effect, that they're bad actors. Did they not get the message from the FCC and Congress, which is debatable that exists as an institution here in this country to begin with, obviously, with chemtrails and everything else? You've got to wonder what we have, and what we have is not what we think. But having said that, they say that they're bad actors, and there are no more moratoriums, and it's quoted, no moratoriums, no moratoriums, no moratoriums. So somebody just sent me an article out of Marin, California, just north of the Golden Gate, how they have slowed down on the deployment. In fact, the article is entitled, Marin Supervisors Decide to Join Legal Challenge to 5G Rollout. Well, let me explain what that legal challenge is. It's only to ask the utility or the wireless infrastructure companies to give them more rent for putting the small cells on city-owned poles. That's it. That's all they're asking for is higher rent. They can't stop it because it cites the 1996 Telecommunications Act that I just spoke about a bit ago. So when you hear about a headline, you have to read the rest of the story, and most people aren't. They're hopeful, they're hoping that this isn't the case, but again, it says here, new rules approved by the FCC in September will give the telecom companies millions of dollars in financial breaks by limiting how much local jurisdictions can charge in access fees for 5G antennas. And there's another aspect of the FCC document, too, probably applies in your country as well, where the cities are being given less time to get back on the application request by the wireless carrier. So basically, they're asking for city approval to deploy these things by applications that they really don't need. Again, it's consent. It's just like many people who understand voting is your consent for these programs to continue to roll out. They need our consent. But it is rolling out. Again, this is a diabolical program of mass mind control footed as convenience for all of us, when in fact, again, these are all military weapon systems disguised as civilian communication networks. And we know that with the smart cities they plan that are being designed by Google, actually. There's a city in Canada called Lab, and it's on the waterfront in Canada. And they're having some problems because what you'll find in the groups now that meet to discuss these things, you'll find they're called citizen advisory meetings. And citizen advisory meetings are a Delphi technique dreamed up through the Tavistock Institute and utilized in every government global meeting globally. And it's also put through by the RAND Corporation here in the United States as well. It's a controlled meeting where the decisions are based on consensus. That's just simply mob rule. If the greater number of people agree on something, then it gets approved. That's how all of this is happening, under the illusion that they are getting our consent, and they'll have these meetings on topics with people that have no background, shouldn't be sitting on these advisory panels. But it doesn't matter, because the advisory panels that are pushing all this through, the same panels met prior to the deployment of the smart meters. The same panels have been meeting over the 5G rollout. This is what we call an anticipatory governance. What does anticipatory governance mean? It means that they are creating new global market schemes on doubt and uncertainty. And what do I mean more specifically by that? I will read you a paragraph out of a bill that we got in our utility bill from Pacific Gas and Electric, and I recommend all of you read the bill inserts in your utility bills. But this is a quote, and it's up on stopthecrime.net. We have a 5G tab. You can read this there as well. But it's from Rothschild, Pacific Gas and Electric, and it says, Understanding Electric and Magnetic Fields, EMF. Can EMF harm your health? Here's what it says. The results from many research studies have been evaluated by international, national, and California EMF research programs to determine whether EMF poses any health risk. Given the uncertainty of the issue, the medical and scientific communities have been unable to conclude that usual residential exposures to EMF cause health effects, or to establish any standard or level of residential exposure that is known to be either safe or harmful. These conclusions remain unchanged by present studies. The word uncertainty, it's in most documents that I read. It's in documents of weather control, of climate change, of ocean acidification, of the use of geysers and geothermal for creating electricity. The uncertainty because of all of the dangers that all of this poses. And so to keep them in a libelous state, they really do walk down the middle of any liability by saying it's uncertain. It's neither safe nor harmful, so they claim. But I wanted to just read very quickly. There's a very, very important document on our website. There are many very important documents. But I would recommend that everyone take a look at a CIA document. It's a 1960 CIA document for climate control. And what is so important about this document is it talks about weapons of mass destruction through water that will cause mass death. And this is happening now and increasing because, as you know, recently they created the illusion that Dublin in Ireland was going to run out of water in 70 days. And, of course, that has not been the case. But in any case, they said day water in South Africa, and that has not been the case either. Again, it's creating the illusion of water that is not available. But again, we have primary water. Best news in this program today, besides understanding that we really do have to understand this as a spiritual warfare. But this 1960 CIA document talks about causing a rise in CO2 and a decrease in oxygen and causing global suffocation. That's what's happening now. Causing mass extinction of species and endangering the forest, causing extreme weather events, mass killing, and food insecurity, and so much more. And the document has a very interesting picture in it. And at the time when I first looked at it, I didn't fully comprehend all aspects of what it was saying, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit now. We also know, and it tells us that our eyes are useless when the mind is blind, and that's absolutely true. Our eyes are useless when the mind is blind. So here is what this CIA document contains. It has the consequences of control of the weather by the CIA, because the CIA has been managing the global rollout of climate control since the 1960s. And it does manipulate many aspects, not just the weather, but education, research at universities and institutional science, and public opinion by news media, etc. It's through the CIA. And they talk about, and the paper reveals not only the intention of global water grabbing, but also desert farming. And I found that to be very interesting, and I looked into that a little further. And, of course, what the plan is to potentially use desalinization plants around the perimeter of what's left of coastlines, which they will all be constructed inland, to cause desalinization, which they say in turn will lower the sea level rise. And they'll use the desalinization to water the deserts and grow food. But this is geophysical warfare by climate control, and how they will cause earthquakes, do and have, and tsunamis. They're fracking. We're just looking at information right now how this is the front page of our newspaper just a week ago. Fracking is booming in the western United States public lands, and they talk about how they're fracking on government-owned lands, federally owned minerals, and they show a man sitting in his truck who has a ranch in Wyoming, and he is watching these trucks roll in and take his minerals because he doesn't have mineral rights on his land. And also, just so that you know, the fracking and the vapor, those are all minerals. So when we toured that geyser that will be up on stopthecrime.net, you're going to hear the discussion about royalty payouts for land leases for people that own the surface land, and royalty payouts for those that are benefiting from the minerals that are being mined. Now, keeping in mind, I didn't throw this in then, but some of the boreholes are 13,000 feet in depth. The average boreholes up there in these geothermal geyser locations seem to be around 8,000 feet. You'll hear that by visiting stopthecrime.net and waiting for us to get that tour up. But they also talk about decreasing in oxygen, again, causing earth suffocation, not only decreasing the oxygen in the environment, but in the water. They talk about desert farming. And that's what I mentioned about using the desalinization plants to farm the desert. But sadly, they also talk about, well, we all know how the sun rays are more, that causes more burning. The sunlight deprivation from the chemtrailing. We have decreased sunlight, and so we have many more molds, mildews, and funguses. We have algae and coral death. We can see certainly the red algae blooms. In fact, recently in Florida, the governor declared a state of emergency because of the algae blooms around the state. We know, too, that their privatization not only of the water but of space as well. And depopulation, increased drug trade. This is all part of the intention, the plans. And again, not all their plans come to fruition. We're going to really have to pray about this because these plans are absolutely diabolical. We live in a world of fakeness where all imaginable kinds of consequences of all of this secrecy, even when the secrecy is not real, as it has to disguise from our minds. And it cannot be hidden from our eyes. We see things, and yet people will deny seeing things. So I would recommend everybody taking a look at the CIA document 1960 on stopthecrime.net, understand what they told us about climate control, that it would be a weapon of mass destruction, and that they would certainly cause mass contamination of the water supply and the air, etc. But also the changing of our seas, of our oceans, because many of us know that the seas are dying. In fact, Rosalind Peterson ran a website here in Northern California for many years. It's still up. It's called Agricultural Defense Coalition. And also it was at one time called California Skywatch. Before Rosalind passed away earlier this year, she was really concerned about what the military was doing on the western coast of the United States with all of their bomb testing and use of radiation and radar, etc., and setting mines and blasting. And what we now realize is, again, some other types of energies that are coming on the forefront is wave energy, where really they're literally going to be capturing the energy from the waves and harnessing the ocean for energy to generate electricity, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions because it is a renewable. Now, I want to, before the show ends, I need to go over the International Panel of Climate Change and what they recently said in their documents. This is important. This affects everyone that's listening. Again, these are their plans. It does not have to come to fruition, but it certainly does seem like much of it is already occurring. So all the words, it was a video that was up, and we will have this posted on stopthecrime.net. It's the IPCC October 1st through the 5th, 2018 conference, and it's a video that was done during that conference. So this is a dictation out of that video. All the words are what you're going to hear from the video. And it says, quote, "For the last few decades, the threat of climate change has been heavily reported. Scientific consensus is now clear." Again, consensus is mob rule, mob decision-making. And that's how they've gotten all of this fakery processed. It's through the illusion that we have the ability to weigh in, and we don't. So understand how we've been Delphied and how consensus has been orchestrated. We've read this even in the World Bank documents, how they use this kind of programming under consensus to push their agendas through. I continue quoting the IPCC. We've never seen a shift from why is this happening to when will the worst happen, and now to how exactly all of this will happen. We know massive catastrophic changes are just around the corner, and the scientific community has shifted its attention from whether humans are responsible for climate change to what kind of disasters to expect. In other words, and I want to add this very quickly, in many of the climate change documents, they say it does not matter now how much we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions or reduce CO2 emissions. It will not change the consequences of the weather events. And of course, we all know that. But it goes on to say there will be climate deniers in the comments. There always are. But these people are a very vocal minority. There is no longer any doubt that human activity has drastically affected the rate of climate change, and we have mountains of peer-reviewed evidence to prove it. If you're one of the people who thinks climate change is a hoax, just consider who benefits from this lie. Fossil fuel advocates, again, they're touting something that isn't real. Our petroleum did not come from fossil fuels. But then they go on to say this: the IPCC was founded as part of an intergovernmental arm of the United Nations in 1988, and it publishes all this peer review information. And once the IPCC has its report, it talks about it's undeniable. But here are some hard facts that they're saying are going to occur.
Before you go into them, Deborah, we have about 25 minutes left, and we have questions, and we have to concentrate on the positive stuff as well. So just keep that in mind, okay?
Okay, well, I'm just going to read the highlights then from this panel discussion, because this applies to everyone that's listening and that has questions. And maybe by reading this, you can go and look this up for yourselves, and this may answer a few questions. I hope so. But they go on to say in this climate change meeting that we've already had 12 years of drastically change from the normal course of our past, and the race now is to keep change at less than 1 degree. They're talking.
Hello?
Hard numbers. The disparity, they're talking about temperature changing. They say that the shift in temperatures, there will be nothing left. No coral reefs will be left. No fishing left. Other negative effects. Okay, populations will suffer most and will be poor populations and less developed countries, and those in fragile ecosystems like coastal and agricultural areas. We can expect increases in vector-borne illnesses such as malaria and the expansion of their geographical range, ozone depletion and drastic heat-related mortalities, huge reductions in crop yields in our food supply, including decreasing rice and maize and wheat and other cereal crops, as well as a reduction in nutritional quality, drought and flooding and other extreme weather, and a stagnation of economic growth, just to name a few. I'm going to add something here right now. After the weaponized weather hit in Northern California, our economy has really been seriously decimated. We've had hundreds and hundreds of people leave because they can't rebuild, not only because they don't have enough insurance, but because they're literally building on what should be a Superfund site of toxins, because they found benzene in the soil after a number of these homes burned down in the burns that October of 2017. But this report goes on to say, this is all very scary stuff, and it should be. We've managed to ignore the science for decades, and now it's time to pay the price. Thankfully, humans are good at adapting and solving problems, especially if they are problems we created ourselves. We should do something to mitigate any future risk. The report lists a number of adaptation options for the regions who should expect the serious challenges the soonest, including coastal defenses, sustainable aquaculture, and ecosystem restoration. But the truth of the matter is that we are largely at the mercy of world governments. Sure, we can stop eating meat, drive electric cars, and use less water at home. But even if every single individual did their part, it's still only a tiny step in the right direction. Just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of the entire world's carbon emissions, and just 25% of that 71% are responsible for half of the emissions. As long as those companies are allowed to keep doing what they are doing, we are screwed. End of story. They say that we should be optimistic and say that we now know what to do, and we literally have to stop industrialization as we've known. Okay, in short, the single most monumental shift in energy, public policy, and personal lifestyle and consumption habits in history will need to transition to 100% renewable energy. I'm going to add, renewable energy is not reliable because the weather is controlled. So solar production is controlled by diminished sunlight. And wind is controlled because they can also control that as well. So they then go on to say, stop using fossil fuels. Again, that's misinformation. So they say, stop using fossil fuels for transportation. The means stopping reduction of gasoline-powered cars, ships, trains, and airplanes. Stop cutting down trees and start cutting them by the thousands. Stop cutting trees. Stop factory farming, and at least drastically reduce the world's meat intake, and hopefully transition to lab-grown meats or other alternatives. If this seems impossible or unlikely, it's because we've never done anything like this on this scale before, but it has to be done. And any of these things on their own good time is not enough. It's not something that can be put off for another decade, even another year. And the video ends by saying we need to elect green representatives and educate our friends and others. So again, through the election process, we are voting and giving our consent for these diabolical programs. And that's just a summation of the IPCC, again, International Panel on Climate Change, from their video. So I can pause for a moment. Oh, wait. No, I do want to talk about the water reduction here and the rules that they're bringing in California. And this is going to happen to all of you as well because they're reducing our ability to access water, and this is how they're starting it here in California. By 2023, just a short few years away, we're having to reduce our water use to only 55 gallons per person per day. And then it decreases within the next few years after that till finally it gets down to 50%, but it will be more. So we had a friend here in Northern California, lives alone in a house, and we're not required to do that just yet because they don't have all the wireless water meters deployed yet, another layer of frequencies in your cities. So before I skip into the reductions, check with your utility departments in your city, in your town, and find out when they're going to be deploying the wireless water meters. It's not a question of if. This is a when, okay? This is all part of the globalist plan to reduce consumption because that way they can ration and cut off water. In fact, EPA documents tell us when you've overused your allotted amount of water and you don't have water on your property, the health department can come in and consider your property unhealthy and relocate you to a place where you will have potable water accessible.
Can I just jump in there, Deborah? We actually have the issues with the water meters. They've tried to bring them in. We had a mass demonstration over here in Ireland, and they stopped them for a period of time. But we know they still want to roll it out because they want to privatise the water and control it. And there's mass demonstrations over here. So we've actually been down this road with the water meters, and that's where we're fighting at the moment. And I know there's talk about the smart meters as well. But look, we only have about 15 minutes left, so we really need to focus on the positives. I know there's a lot going on, and we could probably do a 3-hour show on what's happening in the world, but what we want to do is not just focus on the negative side and what's going on, but the positive side and what we can do. Plus, we have a couple of questions here that we'd like you to answer. Yeah,
I agree.
Because we could do a 3 or 4 hour show and go through everything. I think the important issues are we have a good idea what they're up to. And the immediate things that are coming down the line are the likes of 5G. We know they want the smart meters. We know they want the water meters. We know they want the mesh grid system. And basically they just want to control everybody, and the sickness and the mobile phones and the Wi-Fi and everything else. All that is all part and parcel to the system that they're trying to bring in. But let's go over to the questions, and if you can quickly answer these, because we do want to cover the positives. Know, before we let you go, Steve, over to you for the questions there.
Okay, Jesus, it's frightening information. The links that you have been gathering and giving us during the show there, Deborah, I have been putting them up on the chat rooms, and I do have a copy of them here. So at the end of the show, I will pop them up again for anyone who didn't get them. I'm just going to go kind of backtrack with the question. So we were talking there about, it was mentioned about lab-grown meat. There was a story floating around a couple of years ago about lab-grown meat, allegedly from feces. I don't know if that's true or if it was just a publicity thing. But I mean, we are hearing a lot about the methane gas and the all this the global warming, the alleged global warming stuff, and it's my understanding from what I heard over the weekend that they are trying to get rid of all the cows. This is what I heard. They're trying to get rid of the cows and kind of go towards a lab-grown meat system for people. Have you heard about that? Is that something that's kind of widely known, or am I behind the times? Yes,
very, very widely known and stated in the climate action plans and in the resilient plans. Sadly, people just have not been reading the plans. It is and it can be a laborious read, but those of you can look again up in your city, pull down your climate action plan or your resilient plan, or they call them energy plans. In there you will typically see a graph that will show the greatest extent of greenhouse gas and CO2 culprits in your region. Typically, it's transportation is number one, and then agriculture rates up high there too. In the Wildlands project of getting us off of wildlands and getting us into urban human settlement zones or mega cities, it's because they're saying that dairy and meat, cows, pigs, chickens, so forth, are a detriment to the land, and that it is too costly to feed and produce meat. And they are moving now into growing vegetables and meat in labs. It's all set up. And we're going to be the last to find out about it when that's all we can buy in the stores. So it's not a matter of it just sort of being knowledge that hasn't been talked about. It's already in production. In fact, on stopthecrime.net, in one of our videos, we interviewed a farmer in Colorado here in the central United States, talking about how they have managed to wipe out the family farmer, all intentional. And sadly, the farmers could only get government subsidies during years when they weren't able to sell their products by using chemical and fertilizers that have now become so detrimental. But what they're saying in these plans in converting us to a meatless society and to lab-raised everything is that the traditional farming is out. It's too highly intensive for water use. It's one of the largest culprits of using water unwisely because, again, we have finite water. Again, that's not true. So when you hear that, you just have to tell yourself and know that it's not true. That's a positive thing. We have plenty of water, but that is rolling out. In fact, there are large corporations now that are refurbishing vacant manufacturing buildings in the United States now and turning them into interior growing rooms for vegetables. And again, in that YouTube on stopthecrime.net, we talk about that. It is extremely well known. That is what is happening, and it's happening to you and everybody right now. I hope I answered that question.
Yep, that's a very good answer. Worthwhile for people to actually check out the video, check out the website stopthecrime.net. There's a lot of great information on there. You wouldn't be able to just go on to stopthecrime.net and stay there for 5 minutes. You'd probably end up on the site there for about 5 hours. Anyway, with the rollout of 5G and all the negative things in relation to 5G, do you reckon HARP will now be redundant because they won't need it anymore, or is that still going to be getting used?
Well, I haven't studied that, and I don't know. All I do know, and I think that everybody listening does know, is that there are multiple layers of assaults, and I don't see that they're letting up anything. In fact, I just find more and more layers as we research documents. We just find more and more layers. Sure. And we do know now that the intensity of all of the satellite-based weapons systems of frequencies as well. Landsat, Landsat, is a global operating satellite that literally knows everything at all times everywhere. And we're being tracked and monitored. In fact, I do a weekly show with Dr. Bill Deagle on the NutriMedical Report at 2 p.m. Pacific Time. And we're actually going to be talking about Schriever Air Force and Satellite Base and how Schriever Air Force Base here in Colorado instituted and initiated a GPS tracking system where every single person is tracked. GPS. Everybody is tracked. And that certainly goes into the targeting of individuals and how people are tracked and monitored and how many of the weapons systems are used. The gang stalking, where suddenly gang stalkers appear out of nowhere on the freeways or to harass people on the streets. It's because of this massive GPS tracking system. So from my perspective, with all of the documents, what I have heard said is this is a deadly video game gone live. Many people will say that the demonic entities that are behind this death and destruction are gaining enormous power in watching this battle here on Earth. And many people also liken what is happening to the Truman Show. So for those of you that have not watched the Truman Show, I would recommend that you do, because what we have now is literally the control of the environment on every level, not just the chemtrailings, not just the water, not just the earthquakes, not just what they recently did in Hawaii, which I explained, but also the control of the oceans and the killing of the oceans. So we have to pray. We have to realize this is a spiritual battle. And does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, lots of questions. The Landsat there, landsat.usgs.gov is a website where you can actually get some, obviously they'll tell you can see what they want you to know in relation to that. It says it represents the world's longest continuously acquired collection of space-based moderate resolution land remote sensing data. So, okay, where are we going next?
They're tracking the water. They're going to know, if you have a green yard. From overhead. In fact, that's one of the ways in which they will be policing the illusion of overusing water is from the air. Now, I can tell you I know many people that are going after water right now. They're drilling for primary water. They're drilling the boreholes. They're getting to primary water because here in the United States there have been several actually moratoriums against well drilling. It started in Southern California, and in Ventura County there's been a moratorium against well drilling now for a couple of years. Likely you will not be able to buy any equipment to keep your wells running. So we're recommending that people buy replacement parts, motors, whatever it is that you need to keep your wells running. Certainly solar backup is a good idea. If you're in a fire zone, you have to be able to access water. Many people are getting additional holding tanks for water so that they can help fight fires when they come in their areas. We have met up with firefighters here that were in the October 2014 fires that recognized that this was a concerted effort and a direct hit up on all of us. They recognize that. They've never seen fires like that in their entire working career. And we've had them meet out at various communities here to talk to us about how we fend fires, because you can burn down just from cinders in the winds that are created. And that's how many of the fires started. And the rapid consumption of these fires, you'd have to be here to see how unimaginably evil this was. But I want to answer more questions. So
okay, well we have about we only have a few minutes left, Deborah, and we do want to focus on the positives. Okay, now what can we take out all of this information? I mean, as I said earlier, we know there's a lot. They're planning an awful lot, and we can see things that are going on here in Ireland regarding the smart meters and the 5G and the Wi-Fi and all the technology that they're trying to bring in. And we said before about the middle management and the minions, but what are you saying? We know obviously what we talked about even before you came on. We were saying about it's a spiritual war that's going on as well, and I think a lot of people will agree on that point of view that there is a kind of spiritual war going on, and there are good things happening as well as obviously what's happening now with the technology. But what's the good stuff that you're seeing from your point of view?
Well, what we are, of course, talking about here is because of 5G and the reduction of vegetation, they've got to clear away trees and so forth, and we're seeing that being done here. They're telling us because of fire restrictions. So plant trees. You need more oxygen, so go for your gardens. Water, get gardens going. Be close to nature and God. And do what you can to reduce the frequencies in your area. Many people are going to different companies that support ways in which you can reduce the EMFs. Many people are, there's different kinds of headgear you can wear to reduce the effects of the microwaves on your head. I would recommend everybody look up this report. It's called Operation Crimson Mist. Operation Crimson Mist. The use of microwaves to exacerbate emotions and increase an uncontrollable society is on. This was done during the Rwanda genocide in Africa in the middle 1990s. They also sprayed over San Francisco in the 50s. That's called Operation Sea Spray, SEA spray. So what do we do when we know these things? Well, we take evasive actions. We don't sit there and be picked off. There are many people that are working hard and around the clock to help protect those that recognize these problems with different solutions. So I can say Less EMF is one company that does supply different types of equipment that will help to reduce the effects of frequencies. Many people are putting wire over some of their windows if you're in an area of a mast. By putting the wire over the outside of your windows on the side of the mast, you can reduce some of the extremely low frequencies from coming in through the glass. There are many things that we can be doing to survive and to work and carry this message forward. And I can only say this about the good news is that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. And that's from Martin Luther King Jr. And so I would say become educated, do what you can to inform others, those that will listen, create a community of people that recognize what's happening so you have the mental and emotional support that's necessary as all of this continues to amp up, because it will. And I can say that having that community of supportive people that are understanding the facts helps all of us to endure it, just like being on this program right now with you, Alan. You're across the ocean from me, the acidified ocean from me. But, you know, it's nice to talk, and it's nice to know there are listeners that are engaged in understanding what is, and that we are brilliant. We have unlimited potential with coming up with ways that we can surmount this evil. And we have to pray. We have to understand that this is a spiritual battle. We have to pray and ask for help, because it is as demonic, as evil, and satanic as it can be. And I would recommend, too, a recent YouTube we watched. It's called The Spider's Web, Britain's Second Empire. I'd recommend everybody watch that. It'll give you an idea of how much of this happened. The Spider's Web, Britain's Second Empire. Very good documentary. Again, go to stopthecrime.net, go to our YouTube channel, visit that often. We're literally working around the clock because we're in a heavily targeted area here in Northern California, where we certainly have assaults that are continuing. We have the resilient cities fully in play, where, as I mentioned earlier in the program, people are less able to rebuild because of now the new zoning requirements. That's happening throughout the world, new zoning requirements to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We've just seen contracts now where builders are going, oh, I wanted to say this too. There's now a new agenda for homelessness, where they're going to be raping in and reaping many monies from all of us to presumably help create and reduce the inequity of homelessness. We have homelessness on our streets here, like many of you probably do. That's been largely expanded after the fires. Many people in tents, many people along the roadways, many people in RVs. It is the most heart-wrenching set of circumstances you can imagine, and there's profit in homelessness. Poverty Inc. is a very good YouTube. Poverty Inc. It's a film. You may have to rent it. Poverty Inc. They're making money on all of this. All of the weapons that are being used and creating the mass disruption is profit, absolute profit. And certainly we're looking at insurance costs that are becoming impossible for most people to rebuild, because now insurance companies are not going to be insuring in fire zones. And when you pull up the California fire map, you'll see that the whole state seems to be in a fire zone. So that's why we're getting additional water on our properties. We're drilling for primary water. We're getting pumps We're getting solar backup where we can so that when they shut the grid off, which they will and are, that we can still survive. So for those of you that are listening, work with your neighbors. Go to primarywater.org. Go to the Primary Water Institute. Watch what it looks like to drill for primary water. It's not your normal drilling operation. Very important for me to underscore that. Most well drillers are not even aware of primary water. They're drilling, they'll go down, they'll case and gravel pack and throw a pump down it, and there you go. No, you have to develop these primary water drills, and you literally have to frack them with dry ice, and that causes this kind of this gurgitation down the borehole, clears out the fractures and some of the cracks of the mud so that the water can flow into the borehole, and then you can extract it. You don't necessarily even have to case or gravel pack these at all if you're drilling in the kind of rock, the kind of material that you'll find and easily get to the primary water. So water, water, water. Get water on board, everybody. Don't succumb to the poisonous delivery system of the types of water technology that will make trillions and trillions of dollars over the illusion that we're running out of water.
I think I think people will have to find if they don't have their own well, they'll have to find a local water source just to be on the safe side. But Deborah, we've come to that time. Unfortunately, we have to let you go. But thanks a lot for coming on. Some fantastic information there. And it's unfortunately we have a limit on the show. I'm sure we could go on and do a 3-hour show. There's so much going on there. But a big thank you for coming on and giving us all that information. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your contact details there where people can find you. Steve.
Yeah, it's been fantastic, Deborah, and as Alan said, it's unfortunate that we time is against us. As I mentioned already, we still have a lot of questions. We also have the links that you gave out during the show, the Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, stopthecrime.net, the Sewer Poop Tour on the YouTube, the primarywater.org. There's some other links there as well. We are going to put those back up on the chat room there for anyone who missed out, but those links aside, is there any other links that you have that you want to throw out there just before we go?
Well, the two main websites, I do have smartmetersmurder.com, but that's not a site that I've been recently contributing to, but we do hold that site as well. We also hold toxicsky.org, but again, I'm focusing on stopthecrime.net. Go to our, you can sign up for stopthecrime.net and get our email blast outs. We don't inundate you with things, so you don't, you're not going to hear from us all the time, but you would be getting our YouTubes when we get those up, and YouTubes that we like, that we would, certainly encourage other people to watch as well. And primarywater.org, get that information out far and wide. There are half-page flyers that you can print off and distribute them. Spread the truth about water. We are not running out. And we owe this to our children and our grandchildren to give them the truth. And the truth does set us free, even though the truth is being hindered from us, but it does set us free.
Definitely.
So reaching across the ocean here, thank you so much for having me on the show. I would love to come back again soon because we have continuing stories coming out of the United States and from California.
Brilliant. Okay, that's no problem. I'm sure we can organise that in a few months' time. We can get an update. All right, Deborah, stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com and UnitedWeStrike.com.
Okay, and we're back. Yeah, some great news and information there from Deborah Tavares. She's a very passionate lady about what she does and what she believes in. Do check out her website at stopthecrime.net. If you missed any of the links, hopefully when we do the little bio on the website, we might be able to throw some of those links in as well, just for anyone who didn't get them, because there was a lot of links. But yeah, absolutely fantastic information, and do check out her website there, because I know she's been at that for a long time, and a lot of great information. There's a lot of people even up coming on the chat rooms there saying that she's a great lady and is to be taken seriously. So yeah, do check out her website.
She's done an awful lot of research, and obviously she has a lot to cram in the time that we have. And obviously, you know, this is what she wants to put across to people about how seriously things are going on at the moment. And they probably implement a lot of this stuff in the States before they ship it over to us in Europe. And we know about the 5G and what's happening with that. And they're trying to roll out to the little village in Dingle. They're doing a test with 5G. And it'd be up to the people in Dingle to actually put their foot down and say, no, we don't want this technology. And it's up to all of us to take part in it and stop it from happening. Now, as I say, there's a lot going on. There is good stuff going on as well. And we know that. But the middle management and the minions will just carry on doing what they're doing because they're told by the board of directors to do that. And until the inner war is completely won, we won't see the changes taking place in the outer war. And you know, we'll just have to see what happens in the next year, 2 years. We'll have to see what happens. We just have to keep fighting and keep telling each other what's going on and swapping information. We'll get guests on. We might get Mark Steele on again as well, because he's obviously involved with the 5G as well. But just, you know, there's so much going on. But there is positive stuff as well. And unfortunately, we didn't have much time with Deborah to talk about the positive stuff. But as she said, there's technology out there for people that suffer from this, the dangers of wireless communication. If you want to get, you know, hoods and hats and mesh systems that go on smart meters and stuff like that. So it's all out there, and it can be gone. But the main thing is, I mean, that's doing all that is just kind of treating the symptom. We have to treat the cause, and the cause is to get our politicians not to put it in and fight back. And when we had Walter Graham on, he said they have a legal right to have a document that says that the technology is safe. Do you remember the name of the document?
I don't. It'll probably come to me. No, but no, you're right. There is. I mean, the technology has to be proven to be safe. I mean, you can't just have people come along and sticking it up. And I'm wrecking my brain trying to think of what the document is. If anyone can remember, just drop it in the chat box there. But yeah, it's the same as anything. I mean, even if they roll out this, you know, rolling out the Wi-Fi or whatever it may be in the schools, they have to prove that it's safe. They have to do it at least test it. I can't remember the technical term, but it has to be checked and tested and proven to be safe. Yeah,
well, it's a health and safety document that they need to be able to provide to say that the technology is safe. And as John Regal said on the Friday night, that even Lloyd's of London, which we've said before, won't even insure the technology. So if Lloyd's of London, who insure everything, don't insure it, then you can be guaranteed that it's not safe. So that it has to be a safety statement from wherever, you know, whatever company you're in or whatever school you're in, saying that the technology is safe. They won't have one, even though it's a legal requirement. They won't have one. So, you know, loads going on there. Anyway, our next guest for next week is a chap called, he's an ex-police officer, UK police officer, funny enough. His name is Michael Feely. And he's going to be talking about ancient history and how ancient history, I think, applies to modern day. So we'll get a take on Michael, and you can check him out. If you just go into Google and type in Michael Feely, I think there's a website that you can go and check out and see what he has to say. We have received a few bits and pieces. We've received a couple of books in the post. So I have read one already, which is quite interesting. So we're going to be talking to the individual about that. He's a psychic surgeon in the UK, and we're going to see if we can get him on the program and on air and talk about his skill. We do get information in from publishers and from people who write books, and I know sometimes they send in a PDF copy of the book, but can I just say that we don't read the PDFs because we spend so much time in front of the computer as it is that we just not going to sit down and read a book online. So if you are an author or a publisher, then please send us in a hardback copy of a book, and then we'd be more than happy to read that. And just a quick note, we received a letter from a young chap called Shay. Thanks, Shay, for sending us the letter to the Open Minds Conference. We got your letter and we read it. It's very interesting. If we have time, we'll try and track down that book and have a look at it. But thanks a lot for sending in the letter. He's a young chap of 17, open-minded in that age.
At
Very
17.
good at 17.
As we only said yesterday on the conference, someone asked if there were any regrets, and we were saying, well, one of the main regrets will be that when we opened up and started to learn all this information, that it didn't happen sooner. I mean, I would have loved to have been awake at 17.
Yeah. So the fact he's 17 and he's already aware, Shay, well done. We will, we'll if we can get the book, we'll have a look at it if we can have the time to do that. Okay, well, for myself, Alan James, with a blocked up nose and feeling the cold and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully next week I'll be much better. Next week is November the 11th, if memory serves me well, and they're saying that there's going to be major issues on. There was 3 dates, remember?
Yep.
In August, October, and November 11th, and that's Sunday. And it could be something major, it might not be, it could be scaremongering. So just do your check on November 11th, watch out for that, do a bit of research, make sure you have money in your pocket, by the way, just in case, you never know. For myself, Alan James, take it easy, have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, that just leaves me to say Barry Prince is up next after us. He's on People's Internet Radio with the big puzzle. And what do we have for tomorrow night? I just have a little notification here from Graham. Graham says the Three Amigos are going to be on tomorrow night at 9 p.m. on People's Internet Radio. They're going to have, on the first hour of the show, it's going to be Mark Smith's. That's a continuation of the interview from last week. And the second hour is going to be Fairport, Joan and Graham shooting the breeze. All welcome. And obviously there will be a phone-in facility as well if you need to phone in or if you want to phone in. So I just want to say thanks to everyone who joined us on the chat room tonight. We do apologise for questions, all the questions that we did not get to. They may be answered if you go to stopthecrime.net or one of the other links from Deborah Tavares. Anyway, we're going to hand over to People's Internet Radio to Barry Prince. We'll be here at the same time next week. So until then, have a fantastic week. Take care. Bye-bye.